In part 1 of this series, we talked about the history of dual analog controls. If you haven't seen that yet, pause this video, click right here, and get caught up with the rest of the class. Today, we're going to talk about the control schemes of first-person shooters and where they came from. The origin of first-person shooters start on PC, so we have to go through the whole timeline of PC games first. So strap yourselves in. This is the History of Modern Control Schemes Part 2, First-Person Shooters, parentheses, PC. The first-person shooters genre can be traced all the way back to a game called Maze Wars in 1974, which came out for Mac and all these other weird computer platforms. This game is super primitive and includes none of the controls that we want to talk about. MIDI Maze came out in 1987 for the Atari ST and is a little bit less primitive, but it still only has you moving forward and back and rotating left and right. No strafing or looking up and down or anything like that. So even though it's kinda sort of 3D, you only have control over 2 axes of movement. In 1992, we blasted right into the future of first-person shooters with Wolfenstein 3D for DOS. This pretty much had the same controls as MIDI Maze, but it allowed you to hold Alt as a modifier key for the left and right buttons to strafe. That's right, this game did not use WASD, which you may all know as the default control scheme for movement. This is before the days of WASD, where the obvious choice was, hey, let's just use the arrow keys. 1 year later, we had Doom, which is credited as popularizing the first-person shooter genre. It used basically the same control scheme as Wolfenstein 3D for movement. You'll notice that you can't use the mouse for looking around and aiming. That's because this implementation hasn't even been discovered yet. Doom and Wolfenstein's keyboard-only control schemes were so popular in the early 90s that it spawned a whole genre called Doom clones. Even though Doom is kind of a clone of Wolfenstein, but you know, whatever. At the same time all of this was happening, in 1994, Bungie released their 4th game for the Mac called Marathon. Don't forget, Bungie used to be a Mac developer before it got in bed with Microsoft, and then got in bed with Sony. This is the first game to use the mouse to control the character's perspective. We call this a free look rotating camera, or mouse look. But this option wasn't on by default because it wasn't popularized yet, and it was a little clunky. With your right hand holding the mouse, what would your left hand be doing to control the movement? I'll give you a second to guess. That's right! You use the D, C, A, and S keys, of course! Remember, WASD was still not standard for PC games. By default, this game used the number pad to move and the DCAS keys to control movement. No mouse. The first game to have mouse look on by default was Terminator Future Shock in 1995, but again, this was not popular. This game also did not have WASD by default. It had W, X, Q, and D? Why D? Why? The first Quake in 1996 was attributed as being a major step in modern PC controls, but not even this defaulted to WASD or mouse look. This used the arrow keys. WASD was popularized by the competitive Quake community, so they were editing their own control schemes. In 1997, Goldeneye took the idea of this dual analog control scheme and ran with it. You might remember in my last video how very primitive this was, but this popularized the idea of a free look rotating camera. Goldeneye also used the Z trigger to shoot, which sounds like a no-brainer now, but back then, games didn't have it figured out yet. It is a trigger after all. A game like Medal of Honor for the PlayStation 1 had you pressing X to fire by default. How stupid do you have to be? Goldeneye also had a dedicated button to switch weapons and a button to reload. Many games had these buttons already, but not a lot of games had this package. Goldeneye was really the first game to do free look right. Other developers would take this idea and quickly improve on it. Back to the PC, in 1998, Halflife came out. This is the first game to have WASD enabled by default and mouse look. It also had shift to run, space to jump, and E to use. This is the modern control scheme for PC that we're looking for. It's kind of amazing that it came as late as 1998. After this, games started to slowly roll out WASD and mouse look by default. The next year, we had Quake 3 Arena, which finally defaulted to WASD, even though the Quake community was using it years prior. All of this is really important for console controls. It's because of these controls, WASD on the left hand and mouse look on the right hand, that we have dual analog sticks with the left stick controlling movement and the right stick controlling perspective. Around this time, console games still didn't have it all figured out yet. In fact, this was the time, the late PlayStation 1 era, early PlayStation 2 era, that I played my shooters mostly on PC. PC games had the right idea. It now became time for console games to follow suit. What do you guys think about PC control schemes and how they affect modern console control schemes? Leave in the comments below, add me on Twitter and all the social media garbage. I did not expect for there to be so much information on this topic. I knew that I was going to want to make this a series, but I did not expect there to be so much PC stuff. So the next part is going to be on console first-person shooters. Subscribe to make sure that you see that when I make it. And if I made it already, there'll be a card or an annotation or something that'll take you there. At the time of this recording, we're also giving away a free copy of Metal Gear Solid 5 for the PS4. Go to Twitter and use the hashtag WolfDemMGSV and tell us what your favorite character of the entire Metal Gear series is. And you can get yourself a free download of Metal Gear Solid 5 for the PS4. So yes, new videos every single Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and live streams on Thursday. Thank you guys very much. Have a good week. You want the user to have fun, to feel rewarded. Most of the time, you want the user to understand what they're supposed to be doing. You want to present them with problems and make them feel like they're coming up with their own solutions. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, you're guiding them through the experience. That's what great level designers do. I watch all the James Bonds as they come out. Have no idea what the lore is or anything about James Bond. To me, they're all like independent movies.
Right. Well, typically, yeah. The great thing about James Bond, at least before Daniel Craig came on, was that continuity didn't really matter. You know, you can just pick up a James Bond movie anywhere and just get the general gist of what's going on.
I was always lost.